All right, so my name's Thomas Weeks, and this weekly workshop is on network and host scanning using nmap on Kali Linux. Let me get my water close by. Nmap is kind of one of the tools of choice that you want to use when you're trying to enumerate or list out what's on a network. So before you can secure things, you have to know they're there. So this is the tool that's used for that. Not as advanced as other tools like Metasploit, which is a Metasploit framework, which is a very in-depth kind of vulnerability and exploitation tool. But this tool goes hand in hand with tools like that. In fact, Metasploit will actually do nmap scans and integrate nmap scan databases to give you a fully comprehensive suite of tools for scanning, enumerating, and doing penetration testing. So, but nmap is really good because it teaches basics of networking and things like CIDR blocks, which we'll get into here in just a second. So if you're going to play along, you can play along on any Linux distro. Just about you can install nmap on all major distros. Kali Linux has a lot of the tools that we're going to be using today built in. And I'm going to be using specifically the new Kali Linux with Metasploitable 3 environment that I've linked to there. You can click on that again, log in, and provision your virtual machines, so you can play around with that. You will want to disable any pop-up blockers or ad blockers, cookie blockers, because we use cookies to connect your identity to your Google login or your Microsoft login, so we can authenticate you. If you want to, besides this little miniature Teach the Teacher course, if you want more information on this, kind of the definitive guide is the Foroto book, Nmap Network Scanning. This is by nmap.org, the people who created Nmap back in the 90s. Really good resource. It's kind of dated. It's 2008, but the concepts are all the same, and the tool syntax is the same. So would encourage you checking that out. It's a good book, classroom book, and good reference, good desktop reference. So last week we talked about Linux, POSIX, regex tools, tricks, and tips, and we're going to build on that this week and get into network host scanning using nmap, as I said. First thing we want to talk about before we start talking about port scanning, anytime you teach offensive tools, which that's what this is, this can be considered an offensive tool, even though you're not typically attacking a system with it. Scanning is often seen in some states as a prelude to an attack. So, and it can get you in trouble. We'll talk about that first with ethics, and then how to scope your network size. When you're gonna get on a network, you're gonna scan it. For example, I want to see all the printers in my building, in my office. Sometimes there's things we don't expect, and so I like to scan it once in a while just to sniff around and see what's out there. But before you do that, you have to know how big the network is, and so telling nmap where to start and when to stop. I mean, if you don't do that, the entire internet is 4.7 billion IPs large, so you don't want to scan all of that in space. You want to split it up into your local network, or another network somewhere else you might want to hit. Then ping scans versus port scans, just some basics on the differences between the two, and when you don't want to do things like ping, and when you don't want to do things like port scans, for example. And then use some useful command line options. We're going to go over some cheat sheets I put together for you guys. You can check out, and then integration with scripts and other tools. So and that ties in with other things. We don't have a lot of time to get into some of that, but I'll just barely touch on it just a little bit, just to whet your appetite and give you some more links so you can go research it yourself, because we are limited on time. We got like 30 minutes, I think. So port scanning ethics. First of all, I threw this in there the last minute, but it really should have been first. In fact, that's why I slid up here at the very top, because especially when talking to kids will explore anything they learn like this that's cool and interesting to the maximum, and doing so can get them in trouble. Can get them blacklisted from the internet. ISPs will not service them. They can be dropped by their phone companies. It's bad. Parents can get in trouble. So I tell kids, and if an IP address, an IP address on the internet is much like a house somewhere on the planet. To be able to find it, you have to have an address. So the address is how you find a host on its network. just like it's how you find a house in the country, state, city, street that it exists on. So just like I was saying a second ago, um, so just like you use a house's address to find it in what country, state, and city and street it's on. That's what an IP address is for locating an internet host, a host on where it is on the internet, where it exists, including its own network, its local LAN. So if a house is like an IP address, and we know houses have many doors and windows, which are ways into the house, then that's essentially what ports are. Ports on an IP address are synonymous with doors and windows on a house. So ports are like doors and windows on an internet host, an IP address. If it's running TCP/IP, then it has ports associated with it. So when we talk about ports, we're talking about services. So services being things like web, email, Minecraft, SSH. These are different services that run on the server or that run on the system. Maybe a server, may not be. And the ports are the way into those things. So when you're scanning, you're doing network scanning. You're not just scanning for or you're typically either scanning for IPs, for actual houses, if you will. And then once you've identified the houses or the hosts, then you identify what services are on each one. In other words, what things are locked and unlocked. So just like scanning, I'd say scanning your own host. I tell this to kids. Scanning your own host on networks is fine. It's just like going around the house, checking on the doors and windows before you leave on vacation. I tell kids, your dad, what is some things your parents do before you leave on vacation? They turn off the water and they check the doors and windows. Yeah, they check the doors and windows. That's like scanning for ports. So, however, how would it look if your dad, walked up the street and started rattling the doors and the windows of all your neighbors' houses? Would that look good or would that look bad? Some places it may be illegal, maybe trespassing. Other places it may be fine. Regardless, someone's probably going to call the police. So you don't want to go scanning other people's systems on other people's networks without their knowledge and permission. In fact, I usually like to I do that once in a while. I like to get people's permission in writing. So I have proof. Look, they said it was okay. So don't do that. Just going and exploring innocently. In some states, it's considered a prelude to an attack, which is hacking, which can get you, felonies. So you have to be careful. You don't know what state you're in, and always get people's permissions, especially at school and stuff like that. That can get you expelled. So I like to go over that, and then going hand in hand with that little lecture, I often link people to the teachers to the White Hat Hacker Agreement form. I won't click on that, but if you guys are on the slides, you can click on that and download that. It's a PDF we put together as a part of teaching ethics. So we'll teach ethics, and then we'll have the kids sign this form, even though they're minors, can't legally sign anything. But it just makes an impression that we're setting the bar. What's okay, what's not okay. We write it down so it's crystal clear. So I'd like to do that. First of all, before we start scanning a network, I like to scope it, scope the size of the network. So in this case, we don't use ifconfig anymore. On newer systems, we use IP-addr show from the Linux command line. Windows is still using the old ipconfig, I think it is. But on Linux, this is the command you normally use to tell you what the IP address on Ethernet 0 is, for example. So that's my VM's IP/CIDR block. So the IP address, that's my actual IP address on my VM, and the /20 is my CIDR block. That tells me how many bits out of the 32 bits of a v4 IP address my network size is. So everything, the first 20 are the network, and the last 12 bits are my IP space. Is that right? 32? Yeah, 20 plus 12. So if students and teachers don't understand this concept, this could be an entire class. Just looking at network masks, most people are used to the 255 notation network masks. ifconfig would show what's called VSLR notation, which is 255.255 whatever. CIDR notation is the more kind of more modern version of that, classless networking, and that just defines how big a chunk we're going to be scanning. if I set a /32, that's one IP address. You know, /31 is two IP addresses. You know, again, being able to do that math in your head is kind of important if you're going to be a serious, you know, command line pen tester type stuff. You need to know that stuff. What I typically do though, when I'm scanning, instead of running, you know, copying and pasting this in every single one of my nmap commands, I make this little alias. Here's a little powerful POSIX alias one-liner I've written that'll make an alias for mynet. Now it does this IPP ADDR show. In fact, I'm gonna go ahead and jump out and jump into my VM and run this command so you can see what it does. I'm only copying and pasting because I don't trust myself on the keyboard here without this environment. Go over to my, you guys can still see me here? Oh, look, I didn't power up my VM, or my VM powered down. I should have done that first. See, Marine's got a VM. I've got my VM on powered, more Marine's and my other one too. I'm the instructor in this course, so I can control people's VMs. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and log in real quick. Again, this is our Kali plus vulnerable or Metasploitable 3 environment. It's fairly new. Looks really cool. So this command I got, I'm gonna paste it in here. By the way, pasting in command line is not Control V like it is on most other environments. It's Control Shift V. Copy is Control Shift C. So if you're copying from a web browser, for example, you'll copy with Control C, but you'll paste with Control Shift V. That's how I got that in there. So this is going to show me my IP address, but what it's doing is I'll chop off the rest of this stuff. That's showing the output of IP ADDR show. And then I'm grepping for inet space. If I grep for inet, I get IPv4 and IPv6. I don't want that, so I'm going to add a space in there and just get IPv4. And then those last few commands, TR is for replacing the character. Actually, the -S does a squeeze of all spaces down to a single space. So you see I have these multiple spaces over here, but I want to copy out the first, second column. Actually, this would be the third column, I think. So to do that, I have to squeeze down all the, I'll just copy and paste this. I have to squeeze down all the spaces out of that. And then I can do this last part, which is the cut the third field if the space is the delimiter is a space. Oops. Up arrow, space. There we go. That gives me my IP address. And then I just put that to an alias. Oh, I see what happened there. That's what I do. That's what I get for not following my own script. Now if I echo my net, oops, and don't type wrong. There we go. Okay, so there's my net. My other alias that I like to also do on top of that is the one that gives me just my IP address. So I know what my network is, and I know what my my IP is by giving it this. That. So you see that my net is my IP address in my /20 CIDR block. That's my entire network. And then this is my individual IP. With these two pieces of information, now I can quickly scan, I can script and automate stuff. So I can scan my own network as well as exclude myself. So I'm not scanning myself. That's the main reason we want to do this. By the way, that my IP command now, I can do my IP, gives me an IP address. You can get the same thing by doing a host name dash capital I think will give you the same information. There's 1,024 ways to skin a cat, basically. I like to tell the kids. Get that someday. So after I scope my network, then I know what I can scan. So first of all, I want to see what a ping scan looks like. So ping scan is going to be a scan where we're not doing a service scan, a service or port scan. So that -S there is a service scan. So I'm going to do a nmap, no service scan. I add the -T4 because it's faster. It's a timing thing. 5 is the fastest. You often start losing packets at 5. I think 3 or 2 is normal. So I do a scan 4 when I'm on the cloud because it's much faster. And then just exclude, or I'm sorry, give it mynet. I'm going to run the command. I'm going to run my command. Mynet is just, again, is going to scan that. Okay. I run that command, and that's going to scan everything on my network, including me. In fact, I think, yeah, in my example here, I'm showing here's me scanning my network and hitting myself. Okay. If I'm doing this to enumerate systems on a network and I've just hooked up my laptop's not a permanent part of the network. I don't want that to be in my report. Typically, you do this to give a report to the company you're helping, you're doing pen testing for or scanning for, to show them what's on their network. You don't want your scanning machine showing up and then the results would make you look kind of unprofessional. And this is just the ping sweep. So this is on the /20. Okay, we got /20. That's 4,096 IPs, I believe. Yeah, so that's 4,096 IP addresses. It takes a little while. It does help though if you put the -T4. If you go too fast, you do a T4, T5, and it's getting really slow. If you do a verbose output, you'll notice sometimes you're getting a bunch of scan errors. It'll come back saying dropped packets or max scans. You may need to drop it down a level. It can actually, going too fast can actually cause it to back up on itself and give you errors. So this I'm just going to go ahead and go to the next one here. I'm going to do the same kind of scan for my next one, except instead of doing a ping scan, and it's kind of weird because you're telling it what not to do. This is service, no. Port scan, no. In this case, it's ping, no, which is going to be a service scan. I'm going to add something to my notes here. -S. And I'm going to do this as sudo. This is called a stealth scan, and this is a bit more powerful. It gives you more precise information on the services that are running. I don't know why it's taking so long. So for this command, you want to run it as root. You can't do a stealth scan as a normal user. You have to either be root or use sudo, one of the two. I don't know why that's taking so long. Oh yeah, you can hit enter. It'll show you the progress too. So it looks like it's 75% of the way through that scan. I'm gonna go ahead and kill that because you can see what the output is over here. It scanned me, my target machine, and that's it out of my entire network. That's all it saw. If you do scans as root on the cyber range, sometimes you'll see some strange stuff. You'll see things that exist or traffic that exists out there, especially if you do some sniffing like TCP dump. You'll see traffic that shouldn't exist. It's other machines that are in layer 2 and layer 1. So you'll see frames, Ethernet frames and stuff like that, and ARPs that you can't touch at the IP level, but are still there because that's kind of the magic of cloud. They're separating you from other people on the network that are excluded by what's called security groups. Anyway, so that was my scan showing a couple machines up. There's me. There's my 249 number. So on this scan, like I said, this is a stealth scan, stealth service scan. Ping, no. And this right here, if you don't exclude the ping in a service scan, especially a stealth scan, first thing nmap does is it tries to do an ICMP, a ping, and if it gets nothing back, it skips it. So you'll prematurely skip a whole bunch of hosts that may have ICMP disabled, for example, if you don't turn off ping. So that's why I kind of say there's two kinds of ping, two kinds of scans. I like to separate them out in my head. I have ping scans and then service scans. So this is a service scan. I'm going to do the same thing, T4, and this time I'm going to say do a / exclude my IP. Should come back fairly quickly, even though this is a /20. It's a good size network. 4096 possible addresses -2 is 4094 IP possible IPs, because the first address is your network and the last address is your broadcast, I believe. So there we go. Look at this. I got back several things. Okay, so here is this 159 machine. It looks like there's a DNS server. Port 53 is DNS. This is the target system that in this environment it's target.example.com. So this is the metasploitable system. It's got all kinds of stuff: 21 FTP, SSH, web. That's Windows, Windows domain controller stuff. 631 is printing. I don't know what this stuff is. 8080 and 8081 are all different web stuff. Lots of stuff running there. This is a great way for finding printers, by the way. You print for like port 9000, 9001 for Jet Direct printers, 515 for LP printers. This other stuff, I don't know what it is. It's coming back with MAC addresses, but no open ports. So these are probably some of those ghost systems that if you tried to get to them, you're not going to be able to get to them physically. But they came back in a stealth scan, is what's called a SYN scan, also called a half-open scan. So it's things that might be there but may not be replying on the network. So so this is the kind of the default scan that you typically want to do looking for services. So sudo nmap-s capital S, and again you have to be root to do that, or sudo sudo. Any questions before we go on? I don't want to. There's a lot of information here, so. The rest of it's going to be just looking at cheat sheets and some common things you want to do with nmap. Any questions? Okay, clear the screen. By the way, for teachers, you do a lot of stuff and you're cluttering up the screen. Control L is your friend. You don't have to type clear. Linux. That blows people's minds for some reason. Whoa, I never knew about that. This is a really handy cheat sheet. I'm going to go ahead and go to a full slideshow on this so we can see this up close. Basic scanning techniques, just different discovery options, some of the more advanced options specifically with timing, and then specific port options when you're doing different ports. So you'll notice on this one scan I did, I'm going to just scan the target directly. I happen to know it's target.example.com. I'll do a very quick stealth service scan. Okay, and then I see I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 ports open. Now that doesn't mean that's definitively what's open. I could give explicit, and for those of you who know networking, the port ranges are from 1 to 65,535. So that's a 16-bit address, I believe. So if we want to scan specifically, it's scanning some of the most common ports that it knows of. Just so it doesn't have to scan all 65,000, it would take forever. So I can give it when I want to be explicit. Typically, I will scan from 1 to 10,000. Of course, everything over 32,000 is considered a high port, which is ports that are used for outgoing traffic, typically. Things under 32,000 are typically low ports, and things under 1,024 are well-known registered ports typically. So all your main or your daemons typically are running under 1,024. So 22, 80, 443, stuff like that. So, but I'll do one. I'll manually scan from 1 to 10,000 on this one IP address, this one host, and you'll see I'm probably going to get something different. I imagine. Probably should have tested this. I had 9 here. We're a little over time, so I'm gonna have to compress this. I had some technical issues earlier on, so. All right, so here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So I got a couple more services here than I did before. 3,000, 3306, 3,000, 3,500, 6697. That's IRC. So definitely have a couple other services here that aren't as common, that just kind of popped up on my radar because I gave a more explicit port scan here. So there's all kinds of different options on nmap. I'll leave it to you in the man page to dig in a little deeper. I've got some how-to guides that also get into it. These are the main ones I take advantage of. So you saw me do this add IP/CIDR notation earlier. The -- exclude, you saw me use that. -A, that's for doing an aggressive scan. I'll show that in a second. I haven't done that yet. Don't ping, you saw that. Syn scan, we saw that. Dash ports, I just did that one. -O is also for OS fingerprinting. So you want to fingerprint the operating system, or you want to look at what versions of everything is running. I'm going to do the -A because that's more fun. Just going to erase all this. I'm going to leave ping off. In fact, I'm going to take all this off and just put a -A. This is an easy one to remember. I think I need to kick this down to 3 so it doesn't error out on me. So this one is this one's really good. After you get a host, you want to know more about it. It'll kind of fingerprint things. It'll do trace routes, show you how many hops are between you and the target. This will show you banners, what version of Apache it's running, what version of SendMail, what version of SSH. So that's really, really useful and can tie into kind of vulnerability testing. And hey, I need to find out, is the system vulnerable? You do an aggressive service scan on it, and you'll get back a really fast report. And they're fairly accurate too on the versioning because they're pulling it from the actual daemon banners. So you do what you do have to be careful. False positives though is, if someone says some security, auditing places, you cannot be running version Apache or version, SSH version 21 point whatever, but Red Hat, for example, may backport security ports, so maybe you can. What they're telling you is a false positive. So that's something you need to be aware of if you do this for a living. And so a lot of information here. We have the same things we had before, the port scans, but now it's telling us more. Oh, we're running Pro FTP. Okay, well, now I know what to attack there. If I want to check for vulnerabilities, OpenSSH 661P1. I have no idea if that's secure or not, but it also dumped out the SSH host keys here. Those are public keys, I believe. And then port 80, it's running Apache 247. Okay, it's really, really good to know. And here's some, it even found some different paths that need to be looked into to find out if those things are secure. Those are applications on top of the web server. It's telling us running Samba. This is not a Windows system, this is Samba. It's running cups, and really, really useful information, as well as what version of Linux kernel it's probably running. It does some best guessing there, not always accurate. Even tells us how much clock skew it has with its time server. Some pretty detailed information, as well as here's the trace route information. So if there was like 5 hops between us and this target, we'd see all 5 hops listed. So your actual like doing a trace route. I think that's all we have time for. Here's some of my favorite examples that we went over here. Here's one I didn't do. Nmap scripting engine scans. These are very powerful. Don't teach your kids about this without doing this hand in hand. Because once they start scanning for vulnerabilities, this does look a lot more intrusive and can be considered a prelude to an attack. This is actually checking for vulnerabilities, reporting back to your CVEs, reporting back your vulnerabilities. And here's some more in-depth stuff for teachers. Here's some labs, the beginner and advanced labs we have here at the Cyber Range on pen testing, scanning, enumeration, and advanced support scanning. You can get into kind of after you do some of these basics. Interactive, I really love this interactive copy paste cheat sheet. Check that out if you got the time. You can click on the syntax, it'll copy it into your buffer, and you can paste it right into the VM. Very nice. As well as some other stuff on the nmap scripting engine scripts and how to get started with that. But that's more a little more advanced and can be very dangerous, especially when you start tying it into things like Metasploit and things like that, Metasploit framework. This video will end up on our Cyber Range YouTube videos here. And as always, if you have any help, need any help, just contact support. We'll help you out. Sorry we went over. I guess we had some technical difficulties though. Any questions? Stop screen sharing. Anybody at all? Have you guys, has anyone here done nmap in the classroom? I'm curious. Can people unmute themselves? Marie?
There is a question in the chat. I'm not sure if it was answered.
Oh.
Any reason why nmap from slide is not working on my Linux Cyber Range?
Which one is it? Couldn't unmute if you can. Nmap from slide.
Hello, this is Chris.
Go ahead,
Hi.
Chris.
Hi, that was my question. I was just
Yeah,
copying and pasting. I'm so much of a hack because I've only caught some of your video, some of our videos in a couple weeks past. So I was just trying to copy and paste from some of the slides, and for a while there, it just kept saying my net was the command not found and so forth. But when I copied directly from one of the last things that you did, I guess that was...
that's because let me share my screen again. That's because we created the mynet command. We ran. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
So I actually created an alias called mynet and my IP. So that's normally where you'd put your my network. That is a typo. It's not my network. It's mynet. Hold on just a moment. So my network is wrong. It's mynet is the alias we created. So that's where your IP/CIDR block would go, for example.
I got you. Now
I
understand.
You know, you found a bug in my slides real quick. Hold on.
But I was having a hard time. My keyboard wasn't hooked up, and I was having a lot of problems with that first one. I was actually going to do the,
well, that's not my fault, but these typos were definitely my fault. So
okay, I got you. Thank you.
Yeah, so that that mynet command is really handy. My IP, you can replace that with the you can also run the host name -I will give you the exact same output. And for these samples, mynet. So what I was scanning, and then I'm excluding my IP address. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. Here's where the host name -I would go. But you can use my IP or just plug in your own IP. Just copy paste your own IP address right here.
Correct.
So either way.
Real quick question.
Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah.
Yeah, real quick question. On your last slide, you had a bunch of the resources, resources for teachers. So then you mentioned some of those exercises. What was helpful was actually going through some of your slides. Do we have access to the past slides from all the other videos?
Yeah. The videos actually, at least mine. I'm not sure if David links his slides or not, but I like to. So the ones I've done the last couple weeks and a couple weeks before that, I link to my slides and we keep them online.
Okay.
I'm not sure how long that's going to be there because I think they're on Google Docs, and our Google Docs is in a state of flux right now. But they're good for the near term. So if you want to get on there and you see any slides you like, copy them to your own Google Drive, and then you can have your own version.
Great. Thanks, Tom.
Sure, no worries. Thanks.